Recording? Okay, we're recording. Hi, thank you for being here. Welcome. Hopefully, if more people join us, that would be great too. We've got a few things on our agenda for today. First of all, I'm going to talk to you for a minute. Then we're going to have a short little talk from Genevieve Suzuki, who's running for La Mesa City Council, and I'll explain that. And then after that, we will have a talk by Janice Selby Jones from Surfrider. And then, in case we can't, contain our excitement already, Jean Mullally is going to talk to us about the Fed and Project 2025. Does anybody have a problem with the agenda as I have described it to you all?
Move to approve.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. Any objections, comments? Okay, we're going to approve that agenda by acclamation.
Schedule for when? Yeah, I'm free.
I'm sorry, what? So the first thing I'm going to talk about today is I am a delegate, as you know, and I have no knowledge about what's going on. I'm going to the convention. I'm looking forward to it. I imagine I will know what's going on about 7 seconds before the rest of you do. That's all I got at this point. I know that when I applied to be a delegate, I was a delegate for Joe Biden. We're all delegates for Joe Biden. So until and unless he were to release us, we are still in delegates for Joe Biden. So that's that. Second, now our next thing, we have 2 members of the La Mesa City Council that are stepping down or not running again. And actually they're in the room, Jack Shue and Colin Parent. So Colin, we already were lucky enough to find help me with their last I'm blanking on names. See, I'm just as bad as Biden. Lauren Casares. And so we've got her endorsed and ready to go. And now we found out that yes, thank you, Moana, I got it. And then we're going to so now because Jack Shue is not running, we're going to have another seat. So Genevieve Suzuki, we spoke to at the last meeting. She spoke to us for some time, and she's going to talk again, and hopefully we will be inspired to call for an endorsement. Generally, let me just say this, that generally we don't endorse without giving you guys at least 2 weeks notice or a month's notice. We generally try to give even more than that. But our bylaws do allow in an emergency situation to call a vote. So we can, under that bylaw, call for her endorsement today and vote on that. So with that, I will pass it on over to Jen.
Thank you, Tina. Ladies and gentlemen of the La Mesa-Foothills Democratic Club, thank you for considering my candidacy for your recommendation. My name is Genevieve Suzuki, and I'm honored to be here today. I'm running for La Mesa City Council because I believe in our community's potential to thrive through compassionate leadership and innovative solutions. As a resident of La Mesa for 15 years and a dedicated member of this community, I've spent years serving on the Community Services Commission and the La Mesa Park and Recreation Foundation Board. My commitment to public service is driven by a deep desire to enhance the quality of life for all of our residents. I've practiced family law with my office in La Mesa on Baltimore Drive for 14 years, helping families navigate challenging times with empathy and fairness. This experience has deepened my understanding of our community's needs and concerns, and I'm ready to bring that knowledge to the City Council. I'm proud to share that the East Caucus has already recommended me for endorsement by the committee. I've also been endorsed by Mayor Dr. Mark Arapastathis, City Council members Patricia Dillard, Colin Perrin, and Jack Shu, La Mesa Treasurer Matt Strabone, and San Diego City Council member Raul Campillo. These endorsements are a testament to my dedication to the values we all hold dear, ensuring public safety, addressing homelessness humanely and effectively, and enhancing community services. Safeguarding public safety is one of my top priorities, and I'm devoted to implementing effective measures that protect and improve the well-being of La Mesa. Homelessness is a critical issue facing La Mesa, and I'm dedicated to implementing compassionate and effective strategies to address it. By providing comprehensive support services, including mental health care, addiction treatment, and job training, we can help individuals rebuild their lives and contribute positively to our community. Further, I'm passionate about re-envisioning our library and continuing to support our parks, creating a vibrant and inclusive La Mesa. When it comes to our library, we need to think outside the box to join other California cities in giving our citizens a more modern central place to gather, learn, and access resources and technology to better their daily lives. Your recommendation is crucial in my journey. Together, we can make La Mesa a model of progressive and compassionate governance. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to working with all of you. And if you have any questions, I will put my website and my email in the chat so you can contact me individually. Thank you.
We do have a few minutes if anybody has any questions of Genevieve. I haven't muted anybody. I kind of was looking forward to that, but you're all behaving.
I'll put forward a question. Are there any other Democrats running in this race currently?
Yes, Lauren Cesares is, but there are 2 seats up because council member Colin Parent is running for assembly, and council member Jack Shu has declared that he will not be seeking re-election. So there are 2 seats being vacated by Democrats, and we'd like to maintain that ratio.
I see. And then on this city council, it's just an open race where the top 2 will fill those 2 seats. It's not like on a region basis.
That's my understanding, correct?
Yes,
Gotcha.
that's true. So yeah, two openings, 2 candidates. It seems kind of perfect to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this way I won't get blamed if people don't win because it was my fault because I let too many people run, which somehow I think it's adorable that they think I have that kind of power, but you know. At this point, I will entertain a motion
So moved.
by a member.
So moved.
Okay, move you to,
Oh, to
I
endorse.
second. I second.
that was Leslie?
Yes.
Okay, so Jean has moved that we endorse Jen. Jen,
Yes.
can you leave for a little bit? We don't have a waiting room, but
Okay, sure. I'll step out.
okay, thank you. And then just, yeah. Any discussion, any questions, I think she's great. I think we're lucky to have 2 people that are willing to run for 2 seats. Seems perfect to me. Anybody else have any comments or questions or? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the,
Do we have-
sorry, what? Yes, we have a
Do we have
motion
a
on,
quorum? I can't tell.
yeah, we do. We have 21. Okay, yes. Sally, unmute yourself.
I don't know
Okay.
if I have the right to vote or not.
Are you a member?
I don't think so. I mean, I've
Okay.
visited the club a few times. I live in Spring Valley, so probably I shouldn't vote.
You probably shouldn't, being in Spring Valley does not make you not able to be in the club. I live in Spring Valley too.
Oh, okay. So I
you-
just need to formally rejoin. I think I have been a
Right.
member over the years. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
So yes, I was just gonna say, all those members, just unmute yourself, and if you approve of the endorsement, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Are there any opposed? Are there any opposed? Okay, by acclamation, Jen is endorsed. Somebody text her and tell her to come back in if she wants. If she was interested in will somebody take care of that?
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. So that's excellent. We've got two openings, two candidates. Now.
So
Jen,
I have a question
sure.
of actually Colin. Colin, if you don't make it into the assembly seat, that means you still would not be on La Mesa City Council?
Yes, that's correct. I'll be finishing my term and not running for reelection for the city council.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
But we're going to be in good hands with Lauren and Genevieve. So
Yeah, I know that. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a similar comment as Collins. I'm happy that we have two strong candidates for two openings in the La Mesa City Council, which will be able to compete against the Republicans should they come up with. They have one who's registered to be a candidate. We don't know if there'll be another one, but we should be in not only good hands, but I think we have a great chance of retaining these two seats. We just have to get people to come out to vote and go down the ballot and vote for city council in La Mesa.
Genevieve, welcome back, and you'll be shocked and excited to know that we voted to endorse you.
Yay, thank you very much. You made my 4th of July even better. Now all I need is to buy some hot
I
dogs.
need to step off for a second because I've got a call from a member and I suspect she's looking for me to tell her how to get on the call. Well, actually, she's leaving a message. Okay, I'll go back to her. Now, Janice Selby-Jones is an educator, artist, and activist who's been cleaning North County beaches and raising awareness about the plastic pollution crisis for over a decade. As co-lead of Surfrider San Diego's Rise Above Plastics program, she advocates for common sense, single-use plastic reduction policies across San Diego County. During the presentation, Janice will share information regarding single-use plastic reduction policy options for La Mesa and will outline local, state, and federal legislation. She will also share some of the ways that disposable plastics harm the environment and human health, offering simple things we can all do to reduce our impact and protect our health. We can create an unstoppable wave of change by working together to end plastic pollution. Welcome, Janice.
I'm muted. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for that very nice introduction. I am going to go ahead and screen share. Hopefully. There we go. I think that's it. Everyone can see, yes. This is me. It's a portrait that a friend took of me surrounded in blue plastic debris that I cleaned up off of the beach. I am a retired educator and an artist, and as the introduction stated, an advocate for common sense policies to stop this problem from happening. So this is an example of one of the pieces that I've made in collaboration with a friend for raising that awareness. It's called Drowning in Plastic. And then I'm going to skip the videos because we don't have as much time as we thought, but I can share the slides with you all, and you can go back and look at the videos if you want to. This is a trailer from a movie called The Story of Plastic. It's very impactful and it's available for viewing. There, okay. All right, so the video talks about the overwhelming problem of plastic pollution, and this illustrates how we got to this space where we're reading about it in the news all the time. We're learning more and more about how it's affecting our health. And we were sold this idea in the 50s and the 60s. The Life ad there says throwaway living, and everybody's rejoicing because they can bring all these disposable items into their homes and they'll just disappear from our lives and everything will be so much better. And then similarly with the plastics as American as apple pie, it's going to transform our lives for the better. And in many ways, plastic definitely has transformed our lives for the better. There's medical innovations, it makes our cars lighter, it does so many things, but it's the unnecessary disposable items that we use for 30 seconds or a minute or maybe a bit longer, but dispose of without thinking about where it goes or the long-term impacts of that. This ad to me is just ridiculous. I can't see my whole screen, sorry. So I can't read the quote. How can I fix that? I know. There we go. Okay, all wrapped up in ethocell. And the ad is the earth wrapped in this plastic film that is very much telling of what we're experiencing right now with the environmental impacts. And you can't read the fine print there, but one of the statements says, and so the world seems destined soon to be all wrapped up in ethocell, figuratively and almost literally too. And at this point in time, I would say the literally part is becoming more and more a fact. Uh-oh, there we go. So most people have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, as it's often called. It's a place in the Pacific Ocean between California and around the Hawaiian Islands that is an accumulation of plastic. But a lot of people don't know that there are actually 5 garbage patches in the ocean. There's the North Pacific, South Pacific, North Atlantic, South Atlantic, and the Indian Oceanic. And all of these places in the ocean are where debris accumulates because of the rotating currents. And living in La Mesa or where I live in Vista or any inland community, we might think that this has nothing to do with us and what we do because we're not coastal communities. However, our storm drains all lead to the ocean. When there is litter, when there's debris that enters the watershed, it does flow straight out to the ocean and very much can enter the currents and become part of the garbage patch. This is a piece of art I made. It's in front of the Wave Water Park in Vista, and it represents the gyre. It represents the currents, how they rotate into the central point, which is the garbage patch. And this is made of all things that I collected off the beach. You can see here, there's a plastic razor, there's a school calculator, there's a balloon weight, all kinds of everyday things that we use all the time that end up in the ocean on our beaches. This photograph, it was taken in a day when there was a lot of broken down pieces of plastic on the beach. I picked up all these little bits in one beach cleanup and I staged them here on this rock to create this photo. And it illustrates the amount of debris that's entering the ocean and how it breaks down into smaller and smaller bits that are virtually impossible to clean up. 8 million tons of it enters the ocean every year. It impacts all ecosystems. It's been found in the very deepest point in the ocean, the Mariana Trench. They found a plastic bag, among other things. It's in the Arctic. It's reached the highest mountaintops, most remote places on the planet. It's in the clouds, it's in the rain, it's everywhere. And 89% of the plastic found on the ocean floor are those single-use items that I talked about before. Animals are affected by it through ingestion, entanglement, and damage to habitats. And this slide focuses on the ocean impacts, but there are also impacts to land animals that get entangled and ingest plastic as well. These are some examples from SeaWorld, the rescue center. The center photo is a fragment of a single-use plastic water bottle that was removed from the esophagus of a sea lion. It was blocking its esophagus actually, and sadly that sea lion perished. This is a plastic shopping bag, and there's also some fishing line that was removed from a sea turtle's stomach at San Diego SeaWorld Rescue Center. The sea turtle did survive and was re-released. And again, these are items that were removed from a sea lion at the Pacific Marine Mammal Center, which is in Laguna Beach. So again, this illustrates the fact that this is happening here in our waters. We tend to think of places far away where animals are being impacted, but it's happening on our coastline. And this is probably the best illustration of that. This photograph on the left is the contents of one northern fulmar, which looks very much like a seagull, that was found at La Jolla shores. There's a scientist who's just finishing her dissertation for her PhD this week. She necropsied seabirds that were collected all along the San Diego coastline, and every single seabird that she necropsied had ingested plastic. This one northern fulmar represents well over 600 pieces of plastic that it had ingested. Right here on our coast, we see pictures of birds from the Midway Islands or other places where this is happening, but it's happening here because of the things that we're doing in our daily lives and the way we deal with what we consume and how we dispose of it. There's also climate impacts. Plastic has emissions throughout its life cycle, from extraction to production to transportation, the disposal of it, how it's handled in the waste industry, et cetera, et cetera. There are greenhouse gases throughout the life cycle. And then more and more health impacts we're learning about. The average person ingests what they say is about the equivalent of a credit card worth of plastic every week. It's in our food. It's been found in human bloodstream, lung, liver, kidney samples. It's in breast milk. It's in placenta. And it's disrupting all sorts of having all sorts of human health impacts, from endocrine disruption. They're finding it in relationship to cancers and so many different health impacts that just become more and more worrisome. Just about every day there's a new headline. I'm not going to show the video. I wasn't going to show it anyway. It's not available, but I had here a trailer from a film called We're All Plastic People Now. There was a film screening of the film in La Mesa a while back. Councilmember Shu attended that screening. I don't know if anyone else did, but it's a very, very eye-opening film, and I'd be happy to share that with you, or perhaps there could be another screening in La Mesa, but there are multiple ways to watch the film now if anyone's interested. So you've probably also heard that recycling is very problematic. The overall rate of recycling is less than 10%. I just read that 1 out of every 6 plastic water bottles is actually recycled. And even when they are recycled, they can only be recycled once or maybe twice into another plastic water bottle. Essentially, they're downcycled and end up as plastic decking, carpeting, synthetic fibers, things that are going to end up in the landfill. That's not endlessly recyclable like a aluminum can might be. 98% of plastic is made from new feedstock because it's cheaper for manufacturers to use.
Okay, now turn it really, really loud. Finally. All right.
Hello. We got that handled. Okay. Because it's cheaper for manufacturers to use the new feedstock than to use recycled plastic. And a lot of our plastic historically has been shipped overseas and counted as having been recycled when it ends up in places where they don't necessarily have the capacity to actually recycle it. I have visited the EDCO Center in Escondido a couple of times, and both times I was told that 50% of the plastic they take in does get shipped overseas, and we have no idea what happens to it once it leaves here. Typically, 1 and 2, plastic resin coated 1s and 2s are more recyclable than the 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, and 7s, which there is not a market value for. So when you're thinking about what you're consuming, keep in mind that 1 and 2 are more likely to be recycled than the others. The other thing to keep in mind is that this symbol with a number inside of it doesn't mean it's recyclable or that it's made from recycled materials. When it has the number inside of it, it's just a code that tells you what kind of plastic it is. And this was almost intentional, some say, on the part of manufacturers to put this system into place to confuse people. Because you see that symbol, you think it's recyclable, you feel good about it, you consume it, you put it in the bin. And California, I believe, has passed legislation to disallow the use of this symbol in this way in the future, which will help alleviate some of that confusion that folks have when they are thinking about what to purchase and what to put into the recycling bin. Okay, so now locally, this is what's happening here to help mitigate this problem. These cities listed, Carlsbad, Del Mar, Encinitas, Imperial Beach, Oceanside, San Diego, San Marcos, Solana Beach, and Vista have all enacted some sort of single-use plastic reduction policy. Some have taken very small steps. And for example, Vista has simply banned polystyrene foam or styrofoam, whereas others have done much more comprehensive things. Over 130 cities across the state have banned polystyrene foam. It's a terrible, egregious material. This is a photograph, an example of one walk at the beach that I took, and here's all this foam. I started collecting it and piled it up for this photograph, but it breaks down really quickly. It enters the watershed easily because it's so lightweight, it can blow, and then styrene is known to be a carcinogen. So styrofoam is on everybody's must ban list. And all these cities have done that. Oh, here's a slide that explains why. It's per beach cleanup data. Cigarette butts used to be the #1 item found in the most recent San Diego County beach cleanup report. Styrofoam has surpassed cigarette butts. And we're not talking about whole containers or whole cups. We're talking about the little pieces that break down. So this is what Carlsbad has done, and Carlsbad is a model that we're encouraging other cities to take a look at. It's currently the one of the most comprehensive in the county because in the second bullet here, they're requiring that their foodware be reusable or certified compostable or marine degradable. All the other cities allow for recyclable. So a recyclable plastic container could fit with an ordinance in Encinitas. Right now, Encinitas is strengthening their ordinance to make their materials required to be compostable as well. And then Carlsbad also has expanded the California bag law to retail and to restaurants. And they have banned plastic beverage bottles for city facilities and city-sponsored events, and they have enacted a balloon release ban. Other cities, Encinitas, Del Mar, Solana Beach, have banned the sales, use, and distribution of helium-filled balloons. Carlsbad just did the balloon release ban. So where does this leave us in La Mesa? Well, Councilmember Hsu, and you might want to chime in, Councilmember. Councilmember Hsu and Dillard put a discussion on the agenda for the meeting, the February 13th meeting. The council had a robust discussion about what they might want to do, and ultimately voted to create an ad hoc committee that would conduct community outreach and begin the process, at least, of drafting an ordinance. Councilmember Hsu graciously invited me to be a part of that ad hoc committee, and Mitch is the Surfrider San Diego policy coordinator, and he has also been attending those meetings. We've had 2 so far, I think. with one more scheduled for later this month. And so far been talking about the process, the timeline, how community outreach might work, what that might look like, and so forth. Councilmember Shu, did you want to chime in on any of this?
Sure. Thank you, Janice, for that great program so far. I can just bring you a quick update. First of all, on February 13th, there were several things I put forward to the council. Almost all of them got approved by the council to go forward. What did not go forward was a ban or I should say over a period of time with 1 year of implementation. We would also do what Carlsbad did with regards to not having plastic bottle water at city events. So that did not go through. My fellow council members decided that would be too difficult and would restrict organizations from fundraising or whatever. So that's one item that still I think needs to be done, that should be done, because we don't really need plastic bottles to keep people hydrated. There's many ways to keep people hydrated, and to raise money as well. So I think and that's something that our city council needs to be active in that front and make that happen. With regards to the ordinance, I wanted to make sure that the ordinance was developed in a way in which we would get good, strong support from all parts of the city, that would get compliance would move quickly and without very much objection from the retailers, from the food vendors, but also wanted it to be comprehensive. So taking the best and what we've learned from other cities in our region, we can put forward an ordinance that does that. But it involves getting people in La Mesa, the vendors, informed and involved, and that may take a number of months. Meantime, the city staff is working really hard on other things. So this process is going to take many months. So I don't know if I'll be on the council when it does come up, when the ordinance does come up for a vote. I hope it does. We'll see how good we are in the next 4 months or so to try to bring it to the council to have a draft ordinance. But that's where we are now. That draft ordinance will include, I hope, issues about all retailers, food retailers having compostable or reusable both flatware as well as tableware. And in terms of styrofoam, we want all styrofoam users in the city to switch over and not deal with styrofoam anymore, not use styrofoam, particularly the peanuts. So that's going to take some work because we have a lot of retailers that may be shipping things out other than FedEx or UPS and other folks. I'm speaking of manufacturers that may be producing a product that they need to ship out and they're currently using styrofoam. We'll have to work with them to eventually have them convert to something else. So those are parts of the ordinance that we're working on. I hope that it is comprehensive. As we go through the public process, I need La Mesans to speak up because if you don't speak up, certain voices are louder than others, and the louder voices may prevail, which may mean that our ordinance may not be as strong as most Masons like. So I think I want to encourage public participation in the process that we're developing now so that we can make it a strong ordinance and that the full city council can adopt it whenever it does get developed to the point that it could come back to the full council. That's where we are now. One other thing is the release of balloons, lighter than air items. We're going to just flat out prohibit that in the city. At least intentional release. If someone accidentally releases one, we won't write them a ticket. We might just have to warn them that that's not allowed. So that's where we are with that. Styrofoam, intentional release of balloons, and a broad ordinance dealing with plastics and going towards compostable or reusable, where plastic bags or bags from retailers, the state deals with grocery stores. Will have to look into seeing if we can just, like other cities, make the same rule that the city is using to go to all retailers. And then, you know, other questions or issues may come up. And for example, how do we have food retailers provide sauces or soups and things like that? Are there items that they can use that is not that are reusable rather than throwaways containers? So that's something we'll have to look into. And I think we may have good examples of how that can be done in the future. Sauces, Councilman Parent was worried that he'll lose his sauces from his favorite burrito places, which are packaged in a little plastic thing. So maybe we'll have to give an exception to just Councilman Parent to have his salsa. But anyway, these are little hurdles we'll have to deal with. I think they are doable, and we can go forward. You know, if other cities can do it, La Mesa can do it as well. In fact, I hope we do it better than all the other cities.
Thank you for that. You brought to mind a few things. One is that they are making now compostable sauce containers that can be processed in curbside bins. So there are things that are happening that are becoming more and more available, and it's only going to continue improving, and there'll be more and more products for businesses and customers to choose from. I think I'm almost at the end of my time, but I want to run through the rest of these quickly and share a couple other things. This is AB 1276. It's a state law that only utensils, straws, stirs, condiments should only be provided upon request. In my experience, there's a lack of compliance. When I'm dining out, I very often have to say, no straw, please. They'll still automatically provide me with a straw, even though they shouldn't be. So I encourage people to give gentle reminders of that when experiencing a lack of compliance. And then we touched on the expansion of the California bag law. Catherine Blake Spear, who's the state senator in the district where I live in northern San Diego County, has proposed a strengthening of the California bag law that will require all grocery bags to be recycled paper or reusable. And she's going to be holding a press conference in the county sometime soon. I don't have that date, but that will go a long way. As you know, during the pandemic, everything seemed to kind of backslide. We're seeing more and more plastic bags for grocery shopping, and catching up with that backsliding still hasn't gotten us to the place we were before. So hopefully this legislation will be adopted, and that will do a lot to help with the plastic bag problem. And then if the state law is adopted, then that would apply, for example, in Carlsbad, where they have already expanded the law to retail and restaurants. They will also be going by the new state law that will require recycled paper, 50% recycled paper or reusable bags. This is SB 54. I don't need to get into this. You just need to know that it is statewide legislation that's going to go a long way toward improving all of these issues that plastic is calling. But in a local municipality, we don't have time to wait. The state moves very slowly, and there are things that can be done very quickly at the city level. And we really don't have time to wait for all these things to take place when we can do it super quickly, or not as quickly as we'd like, Councilmember Shu, but we can move more quickly than the state for sure. These are just simple things everyone can do. Do you know you can take your own reusable cup to a fast food restaurant and fill it yourself? California law allows that. I take my cup with me when I go out, and I can, if I go to Panera, say I'm ordering a soda, I want to use my own cup, perfectly fine. No one has ever questioned that. If you don't know the right way to recycle a bottle cap, I encourage you not to use single-use plastic water bottles, but when you do, put the cap back on when you recycle them. If the caps aren't on the bottles, they get spit out of the recycling equipment and they won't be recycled. And then the same thing is with the cups. It's okay to use your own container when you dine out. I have a container that I take with me, have it in my car at all times. When I eat at a restaurant, if I have leftovers, I put my food in my container. It's perfectly legal when I do it, and people see me doing that. They're always a little bit surprised, but very happy to see that that's possible. So I encourage you to give that a try. And again, straws aren't supposed to give you, restaurants aren't supposed to give you straws, stirrers, utensils, unless you request them. And that is it. I will stop screen sharing, and we may not have time for questions now because I believe I went over time, but I'm going to hang on the line.
Yeah, you're fine. We did have a question. What's the cost to consumers of the different kinds of packaging?
I'm not sure that I completely understand the question. Would it be?
If you're getting takeout in a compostable, I think this is what they're asking. A compostable, carton may cost more right now than a plastic one.
There will be a bit of a cost difference. It's really hard to quantify exactly what that might be. It could be a few cents to a quarter to 50 cents more, depending on what the container might be. But in other jurisdictions, in other municipalities, they've all had a waiver process for hardship. To my knowledge, none of the 9 cities that have adopted ordinances have there been any waiver requests, and that there are more and more products. The costs are coming down, and it is becoming more and more doable. And if restaurants would prioritize the skip the stuff and not giving a straw and a plastic utensil and those accessory items to every customer every time, they could offset some of the cost of a little bit more expensive compostable container by not being as wasteful. And if we all brought our own containers when we dined out, that would eliminate their cost altogether.
And if I could add to that, the good part of having an ordinance citywide is that all of our retailers, all of our food retailers will be playing by the same rules with regards to what materials they're going to be carrying. So it evens the load, if there is a load, to everybody. It levels the playing field for all of our retailers. And lastly, someone asked, are there substitutes for these things? I'm old enough to know that there was a time in which we didn't have this stuff. There was a time in which I didn't use styrofoam at all. We didn't have styrofoam cups. We didn't have this many plastic stuff. So I know it's doable. We did it, 50, 60 years ago. We didn't have that, and we're doing fine. We didn't have plastic bottles, and I don't think I dehydrated. I was able to find water in places, water drinking fountains. There are ways to handle all these things and not have to rely on plastics to make our lives a bit more convenient for some. Because there's several things or terminology I use when we describe these issues. One is we look at the primary cost, and often that's all we look at. And that's, I think, a mistake. We have to look at the secondary cost. We now know these plastics are causing or are in our systems. We don't know how much damage they are causing to our bodies and increasing our healthcare costs down the road. We know they're in fetuses. They don't belong in fetuses. They don't belong in placentas. They don't belong in mother's milk. And we don't know what it's doing in that system. We're just beginning to learn what kind of damage it could be causing. And when we find out, unfortunately, since there's so much plastic already out, it's really a bit too late. So the sooner we can reduce the amount of plastics and try to clean it up, the better. Because I don't want to find out later that it's causing major harm to us health-wise, and we haven't stopped, we haven't slowed down, we don't have an alternative.
Yeah, the number of microplastics in one bottle of bottled water is astronomical. And so when you're drinking out of a single-use plastic water bottle, you're literally drinking microplastics. There's a lawsuit happening because of the advertising on plastic water bottles as it being pure, etc. The adjectives that they use being misleading, because we now know that it's not pure as they state it is. Chris asked about anyone figured out how to make money using the existing throwaway plastics we currently have. And the waste haulers, EDCO, for example, where I visited the facility, they bale the plastic that is has a market value, and they sell it on the market. Much of it is not marketable. Like I said, 2 through 7, there's no market for it. It's too expensive to process. It's not. It's made of multiple different types of chemicals, which makes it hard to turn into new products. There's so many reasons that make some plastic hard to recycle. But the MRFs, the waste haulers where they sort it, they sell it, they are staying in business by being able to do that. But the ones that are really profiting are the fossil fuel, the fracking, the people have sold us this idea that it's going to make our life better. And as the transition to electric vehicles and to electrifying our homes takes place, the fossil fuel industry knows that they have to substitute that profit. They have to find a way to make profit in other ways. And one of the ways they're doing it is by ramping up the production of plastics. It's their plan B for staying in business, for continuing to pollute the planet and to pollute us. Jack, one last question, just briefly. If someone wanted to be on that ad hoc committee, is there room for people to join? And then my other just comment was going to be that I would be sure to reach out to this group when it does get on the agenda, whether that be before Councilmember Shu and Councilmember Parent have left the council. Either way, we'll keep you posted about the next steps and what's happening.
Right. So the ad hoc committee is just dealing with the process itself. It's not going out and working on the ordinance itself, or even seeking public input on the ordinance. So it's really the process that will be rolled out. If anyone wants to comment on the process itself, what we should include or not include, they're welcome to write to Councilman Dillard and I, who serve on the ad hoc committee, and you could CC the Assistant City Manager Amanda Lee, and Hillary Eagle, our Sustainability Manager. And I was hoping that the Sustainability Committee of the city would be involved as well, but unfortunately, for various reasons, they're not. So unfortunately, they're not part of the ad hoc committee input at this time. But I think the process that we put forward will have plenty of opportunities for the general public to comment and help us guide this forward. You know, and I'm open to making presentations again to other organizations and groups to get that input. We'll probably have some kind of public process with a questionnaire for people to provide input. So I think that's going to be helpful in crafting an ordinance, but more importantly, involving the community so that we do compliance. And like any ordinance or law, we're not after making someone do something in terms of forcing that issue. We want compliance because this is the right thing to do. It's like, you know, stopping at a stop sign. You don't do it because there's a policeman watching you. You do it because you want to make it through the intersection safely. You care about making a safer world. So, yeah, if we make an ordinance, yes, there's another rule, but we want compliance. And the citizens hopefully are compliant because they know we're making this contribution to making a safer and better world, at least from La Mesa.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Janice. Janice, if people want to get involved with Surfrider, are there things they can do with you?
Absolutely. I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'm willing to chat with anybody about what Surfrider does. We could come back at another time and do a presentation about other things, other programs through Surfrider.
Sure.
Because there's the plastic issue is just one of the things that Surfrider does. But thank you for asking that.
Okay, thank you. I think we're ready to move on. Once again, remember, I am a delegate, but I do not control who is going to be president. I have no more power than you do. Just remember that. And I will find out what's going on about 7 to 10 seconds before everybody else does. So I have no superpowers. Our next speaker is going to, speaking of the election and the horror in store for us, we're going to have our own Jean Mullally, who's a CPA, talk about the economic crises and the Fed's monetary policies, 1980 through 2023, and also the Project 2025 plan for the Federal Reserve. Take it away, Jean. Unmute yourself. Oh, before Jean talks, real quick reminder. Remember, if you're not a member of our club, we'd love to have you join us officially. You could go on to our website or any of the information that you get via email or whatever, and find us, or come to the next meeting. The next meeting will be in the park, in William Hisey Park. Anyway, thank you, Jean, and I will be quiet now.
Thank you, Tina. I'm not a CPA. Instead, I never worked in public accounting. I worked in private accounting for, I don't know how many years, 40, 30, I don't know, forever. But I've always been fascinated by the Federal Reserve. And when I realized that we had this issue, that Project 2025 had been sponsored by the Heritage Department to be the roadmap for when Donald Trump takes over the White House and changes they want to make. I was very interested in volunteering to study the Federal Reserve element of that. Is what are they doing to the Federal Reserve? So to me, it's always been a fascinating business. They can create money and by entering a record to their liabilities on their balance sheet and use that money to buy debt, and the debt becomes an asset that they earn interest on. So they can buy federal bonds, federal treasury certificates that they earn interest from on those certificates. So it's quite a business, quite an activity. What the author of the Federal Reserve section of the Project 2025, his name is Paul Winfrey, and he has excellent credentials and a good record of things that he's done, but mainly for Donald Trump and for the Senate and for Republicans. But he describes how Congress created the Federal Reserve in 1913. And so what my plan here is to give a very quick overview of what the Federal Reserve has been doing that they're concerned about, and then that should last no more than 15 minutes, which might be too long. Let me know. And then beyond that is to show you a chart of what's happened to the economy and to our lives in the last 30 years or so, in the last 50 years. So it's all on one sheet of paper. That after I'm done talking, I'll put that on screen. But the Congress created the Federal Reserve in 1913 under Woodrow Wilson. It was designed to better manage the money supply, to supervise the banks, to serve as a lender of last resort. So to provide funding in a crisis to banks, instead of having them fail, to provide an avenue for them to survive by creating an elastic money supply, which are Federal Reserve notes. They can issue those at any time they feel appropriate. They also established a national check clearing system with the original act, and a nationwide electronic telegraph payment services. So that was the most advanced thing that of that era. The Heritage Foundation believes the Federal Reserve's mandate has been expanded since 1913 in ways that do not serve the public. And so that's what we're here to explore. Changes to the mandate were made in the 1930s during the Depression. Again, they were made in 1977, resulting in when the U.S. abandoned the Bretton Woods arrangement that provided for fixed exchange rates between countries, and the rates were the U.S. dollar was pegged to the $35 an ounce of gold. Foreign countries, their exchange rates were pegged to the dollar, so it established a fixed exchange rates. But they were forced into abandoning that system because they didn't have enough gold to cover all the demands on it. And since that time, the exchange rates have been floating. It created disruptions in the economy, and by 1977, the Congress had passed legislation to in giving the Federal Reserve a new mandate. And what that mandate involved was to stabilize the macroeconomic economy, to maximize employment, and to stable prices with moderate long-term interest rates. So that was the major shift in the mandate of the Federal Reserve that occurred in 1997. But other things have happened since then. In 1987, Alan Greenspan was appointed by President Reagan to replace Paul Volcker as chair of the Federal Reserve. One of the things that was discovered by Milton Friedman and his partner Anna Swartz, they wrote a book in 1961 on the history of the monetary system in the United States. One of the things that they discovered and pointed out was that the entire Depression could have been averted if the Federal Reserve at that time had flooded the economy with money, and that would have saved the banks from collapsing, saved the whole economy from collapsing. But what happened at the time was that the members of the Reserve, they didn't really understand what their tool was. They did have a mission to be the lender of last resort, but they failed in using it. Instead, what they did is they pursued a contractionary policy. They didn't lend money to the banks when they were in need. And as a result, we had a huge depression that Milton Friedman and Anna Swartz claimed could have been entirely averted if they had only followed the mandate that they had in 1913. What Greenspan did is 2 months after he was appointed as chair of the Federal Reserve, there was a huge collapse of the stock market. And it was kind of mysterious. Nobody really understood what happened. They think it had to do with automatic transactions, but whatever it was a huge collapse, giant, and it quickly spread to foreign countries. And so what Greenspan did is he stepped up to the plate, and he made an announcement that the Fed has readiness to serve as a source of liquidity to support the economic and financial system. So what the Fed did, and what he did, is they reduced interest rates and began flooding the banks with loans to be used to finance security firms that they would use to stabilize the stock market. And it worked. And the stock market went back up to where it should have been. It should never have fallen. And it affirmed the Fed's role as the lender of last resort. We could have had a major depression like 1930. By the way, anybody that has any questions or is still awake, feel free to ask them while I speak. The Greenspan became noted for low interest, low inflation, and he applied similar monetary responses to the dot-com bubble that occurred in 2000 when that exploded, and also at the time of the 9/11 attack. But then what he did is he employed a plan that he had written in 1977. This is in the year 2000. He wrote a plan in 1977 as part of his thesis, his doctoral thesis. They called it a thesis at New York University. And so what he did is he was following the Fed's mutual mandate to pursue or their dual mandate rather, to pursue moderate long-term interest rates. And what the Fed did is it led to a 30 years of fixed mortgage rate. The 30-year fixed mortgage rates at that time was 11.4%. They'd been very high since and they dropped since the inflation period in 2000. And he dropped those rates step by step to 6.4%, from 11.4 to 6.4 by 2007. At each step, homeowners would refinance their loans. They would withdraw more money on maybe some folks might have done it, would draw more money than out of their equity that they would use for consumption or for other investments. But what it did is it gave a buoyant effect to the entire economy. It also started raising home prices and house prices started rising and ended up with a bubble in housing prices that went on from until 2007, and it inevitably crashed in 2008. We had the crash 2008. But in his 1970 doctoral thesis, Greenspan outlined the entire plan, which included the housing bubble and that it would eventually collapse. But what he didn't forecast, and we had no idea of, and he apologized for, was that in 2008, it would become the most severe financial crisis since the Great Depression. So it was called, at that time, it was called the Great Recession. So under Ben Bernanke, who was the new federal chair in 2008, Greenspan had resigned, or he left, his term expired. The Fed adopted a series of innovative monetary tools, including quantitative easing, which is essentially expanding the money supply. The Fed flooded the financial markets with liquidity by purchasing massive volumes of mortgage-backed securities from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And mortgage-backed securities, if you might recall, was a big thing that was creating the bubble collapse. It injected liquidity into financial markets on a scale never previously experienced. So by 1914, the Fed had expanded its asset holdings to roughly $1 trillion in 2008 to $4 trillion in 2014. In doing this, it had successfully rescued the banking system, restored peak bubble housing prices, back to their unaffordable levels at the peak of the bubble, and reestablished economic growth and financial stability. By 2014, total household net wealth, measured by the Federal Reserve, measures net wealth of by households, stratified by households. The total net worth of all U.S. households had increased from 58 trillion at the end of 2008 to 82 trillion by the end of 2014. So the economy was firing on all cylinders. So 2014 at 82 trillion was above the pre-crash peak of 67 trillion. So, but what happened was that the Federal Reserve claimed there were these weaknesses still existing in the economy. They were worried about deflation and a number of other issues. they chose to continue quantitative easing for another 8 years. So by June of 2024, Fed assets had grown to 9 trillion, and US household net worth. Now, the net worth in doing this, what it did is it was increasing the housing prices were increasing. The net worth was increasing. The stock market was the other big beneficiary. So this money was stimulating the growth in these assets. So by increasing the Fed assets to 9 trillion, US household net worth had increased to 138 trillion. So from 2014 at $67 trillion, by 2022, it had increased to $138 trillion, doubled, right? Not quite doubled. But in this process, the Fed fostered continuously increasing home and stock prices. But at the same time, they were neglecting the bottom 50% of US households who really didn't own these kinds of assets. But then facing the COVID crash, the Fed embraced an outrageous QE measures, and during the 2020 to 22 period, to 2020 to 2022. In the 2-year period, Fed assets were increased from $4 trillion in pre-COVID February 22 to nearly 9 trillion by April of 2022. So what it did is it more than doubled. And by increasing the assets traditionally were cash in circulation, it's the money supply. It more than doubled the money supply. And that was in a 2-year period. So it led to the highest, so it resulted in the highest level of inflation in 4 decades. And it was left the bottom 50% in an even worse condition, facing inflation. So inflation peaked at 9.2% in June 2022, when the Fed finally changed its policy from quantitative easing to quantitative tightening. They reversed the policies. This was done by, in the Biden administration. Janet Yellen was the former federal chair of the Federal Reserve, somehow a shift was taken in June of 2022. And so by June of 2023, inflation had dropped and has since been running in the 3% to 3.3% range. By February of 2024, the Fed had reduced its assets from $9 trillion at its peak to in 2022 to 7.4 trillion in February of 2024. So it's shrinking the problem down. The critics from the beginning, in 2008, when they first proposed these ideas, these plans to flood the financial markets with money, they spoke against the measure and as being dangerous for the economy, and with dangerous low interest rates. Their complaints focused on the idea that increases in financial asset values and higher prices benefited those who owned such assets, while disadvantaging wage earners and those who lacked these investments. Critics complained that the Fed's QE policies would eventually lead to high inflation. This started in 1988. They complained persistently year after year, all the way to 2022, and finally, quantitative tightening became popular with the Fed. But now among the critics is Mr. Paul Winfrey, the author of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. And in his report, he writes, consider the effects of monetary policy on the housing market. Between February 2020 and August 2022, home prices increased 42%. In a year and a half, 42% is what the national increase was in housing prices. So then we get to the question, with that background, I don't know how many minutes I've used up, the Heritage Foundation's program for the IRS, for the Federal Reserve Board rather, is on a screen that Rosamond can put up and so everyone can see, but there's 8 points that the report makes. The first point is to eliminate the dual mandate. So,
Do you want me, Jean, to put out down the Heritage Foundation calling for rolling that report, that one? Okay, hold on one second. I have to move it around.
that's the one. But it's it boils down to 8 points that they want. The first one is to eliminate the dual mandate. The dual mandate instructs the Federal Reserve to promote full employment, essentially to promote low interest rates. It was what was installed in 1970, so it's to eliminate the full employment. Congress should limit the Federal Reserve to a sole objective of stable money, protecting the dollar, and restraining inflation. That should be the Federal Reserve's mandate. These other things, get rid of them. Don't do it anymore. Number 2 was to limit the Federal Reserve's as a lender of last resort function, limit it. And what they're saying, and there are people that think it is a problem. These practices have embedded a risk-laden, too big to fail mentality in America's financial system. So that's the second point. Third point is to wind down the Federal Reserve's balance sheet from 9 trillion to the pre-crisis level, 2008 level, 1 trillion. The fourth point is to limit the reserves slowly to purchases of U.S. Treasuries. So abandon involvement in mortgage-backed securities. But traditionally, the Federal Reserve only bought U.S. Treasuries. That was their main asset on their balance sheet. But then with the crash of 2008, they expanded. First, they bought up mortgage-backed securities. They bought trillions of dollars of mortgage-backed securities. Then they bought the corporate debt. They bought other types of debt, other things they needed to do to maintain low interest rates, to strengthen what they felt was a need to strengthen the economy, things that led to housing prices going up and up and up, and stock as well as the stock market. People loved it. So fifth point is to compel the Fed to specify its target range for inflation and concrete growth path intentions. So that's what has always been discussed. So the Fed should be more clear about where they're headed. Their policy. Focus the Fed regulatory activities on maintaining bank capital adequacy, leave the environmental and social goals to other government agencies. Item 7 was prevent the institution of a central bank digital currency. There's talk about having the Federal Reserve create a digital currency, and Heritage Foundations feels that it has unprecedented surveillance capabilities, as well as potential capability of transaction control. So they have all kinds of big brother concerns. From what I understand, there's a lot of illegal activity that takes place in digital currencies. Item number 8 is something that I think is a good idea. Appoint a commission to explore the mandates of the Federal Reserve and alternatives to the Federal Reserve's system and financial regulatory apparatus. I would think that would make sense. So it should be a congressional approved and formed commission. And the types of things that we should be looking at is did the Federal Reserve allow for other purposes to destroy the housing market, make housing unaffordable? It's one of the biggest social problems we've got, and it stems primarily from the Federal Reserve and other issues that involve the Federal Reserve. So to me, that makes sense. Let's talk about it and look into it. I'm only a hobbyist in this area. I'm not an expert, but those other people are experts. And Janet Yellen is probably my favorite expert. There it is, all 8. Very good. So it probably reads a lot better than the way I described it. But Janet Yellen had comments on the critics and tools, and I really admire Janet Yellen. I think she's top drawer and has always been there. She was former head of the Federal Reserve of San Francisco. She was appointed chair of the National Federal Reserve Board. She worked for the Federal Reserve for years. She has terrific academic credentials and very highly regarded. And she points out that mandates added to the Federal Reserve have been in response to issues that the economy confronted during the development of the modern economy. We ran into a depression. We didn't handle it right. We ran into other issues along the way. The Bretton Woods problem, where we had to abandon it. So every step along the way, the mandate did evolve over time, and it should evolve over time. And we need the mandates. And there was strategies developed within those to achieve those mandates that we need to have also. She calls it the toolkit, and we need to have those things. And it's myopic of the Heritage Foundation to say, hey, let's blow it all off. We don't need any of that stuff. So she, in 2016, Yellen stated that one lesson from the crisis is that our pre-crisis toolkit was inadequate to address the range of economic circumstances that we face. Looking ahead, we will likely need to retain many of the monetary policy tools that were worth and that we developed, that we created, excuse me, and promote recovery from the crisis. In addition, policymakers inside and outside the Fed may wish at some point to consider additional options to secure a strong and resilient economy. So considering the modern economic complexities, Yellen opposes any dismantlement of tools used by the Fed to fulfill its existing mandate. She also cites potential risks that from other things that she's currently been looking at. Several times in 2024, for example, she's voiced her concerns about risk in the potential failure of the large non-bank mortgage lenders. They're not controlled. They don't know how big it is. And it's possible that broader impacts could affect the financial stability. She also has expressed concerns about challenges facing first-time home buyers with soaring prices and interest rates. So she acknowledges the need for palliative affordability measures involving taxes and financing, as well as support for increasing the housing supply. So how do we address that issue that has been created, I think, by the Federal Reserve? As for aggressive actions taken by the Fed under Jerome Powell, who was the chairman between in the period 1920-22, fueling inflation and housing unaffordability, she has shown little acknowledgement of the Fed's role. So that's where we stand. Now, the next slide that we practice getting up is the one that shows a chart that shows the various financial measures between 1990 and 2023. And one of them that shows is the growth in total wealth. So between 1990, the total, there is there. So if you look at the box on the right side, and the left side shows the year. So the box on the left side is what to look at. It's total U.S. household wealth by percentile, and this is what the critics were talking about. From 1990, the total wealth was at $21 trillion. And then, so that's on the far right side of the box. Then it increased to 42 trillion by 2000. By 2006, by 61 trillion. By 2010, so that's when the crash occurred. So it just coming out of the crash in 2010, it was at 62.5. By 2014, I'm saying, hey, they were home free. They were out of the crash. They had $82 trillion worth of wealth. It was above the high point, a previous high point, which preceded the crash. But what happened since then, between 2014 and 2023, total wealth grew to 147. If you look at the next column over, it's the top 10%. So who got this wealth was the top 10%. Their wealth increased from 12.9 trillion in 1990 to 98 trillion in 2023, and it was primarily in real estate. Of that 98 trillion, there's a column on the to the right of the total wealth column. It shows owners' equity in real estate was 33 trillion at that level, and that had grown from 5 trillion in 1990 to 32 trillion in of the total 147 is 22 trillion. The other one was stock markets, and there's another schedule that shows elsewhere that the values of stock market at $60 trillion worth of which is the top 10% had 50 trillion, 49 trillion of that 60 trillion. So it went to the top 10%. The next 30 lowest 35%, those in the or from the 50 to the 90% range, that'd be the next 40%. Their wealth increased also, the upper middle class. Their wealth increased from 7.8 trillion in 1990 to 45 trillion in 2023. So everybody gained, and except for the bottom 50%. If you look at their wealth in 1990 was 800 billion, and it just trickled around from decade to decade. In the last, from 2014 to 2023, it did show a little pop, but for the most part, they have nothing. And if you look at these numbers, what is this? 600 billion or million, 1.5 trillion. What is that? Is that their bank accounts? Is that their checking accounts? What is it? So they left the bottom 50% out entirely. And so that there's other things on this that of other measures of activity, but it's I think the most egregious thing that happened was the 2020 to 2022 period when the Fed went through this phenomenal, unusual, never occurred before, inflation of the assets and the money supply during the Trump administration that created the inflation that everybody blames on Biden. So thank you very much for listening. For those who are still awake, I appreciate your tuning in. And if there's any questions, I'm perfectly happy to answer them. Tina has to unmute herself.
There we go. Ben Cohen says, what does Trump want to do and why is he dangerous on finances, let alone the other crazy things?
That example, I think, was the 2022 measures that were taken by his appointee, Jerome Powell, that resulted in the inflation that we had. But those things are things you do. I mean, it's always been the complaint that right before an election, the Fed seems to get in line with the candidate that put him in power, and they do things but never before in the history of the world has anything like that happen, where you doubled the money supply. So I'm surprised inflation is only as low as it is. So, but that's the kind of thing that Trump does. So there's probably a lot more worse things that he does but that's one thing. So, you're still on mute, Tina.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Jean. Are there any other questions or comments anyone wants to make?
Is this time for public comment as well, or just on the presentation?
We'll have public comment after, which it sounds like we may be done.
Well, thank you.
Leslie?
I wrote in the chat, I just wanted to thank you, Jean. It was very educational and very illuminating. And I'd love to learn more, but this was a great primer, and I appreciate the historical perspective. Thank you so much.
If anybody wants a copy of any of this stuff, just
It was fascinating.
send a note to the club and I can forward it to you.
Thank you.
All right. No other comments. Thank you, Jean, very much. Remember, next month we will not be at the center and we will not be on Zoom. We will be at William Heisey Park. We'll start around 6 o'clock. We will send out more information about if we want to order sandwiches or what we're going to do about food. But I imagine the program is going to be candidates. They want to talk to us. They want to get in front of us, and they want our support as they head into the final stretch, the 2024 candidates. At this point, yes, now it is time for announcements, public comment, whatever you want to talk about. If you could please do the hand raise function, then I could call on you. It looks like Eva Posner is first. Yes, go ahead. You have a minute. Okay, Eva.
Oh, Eva, or do you mean Eve?
Eve, sorry.
Oh, okay, great, awesome. So
sorry.
My name is Eve. I'm here today on behalf of the San Diego County Democratic Party to urgently update you on the state of Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer's reelection campaign. If you're not familiar with her, Tara is an economist, attorney, and former senior advisor to the Obama administration, and she's facing a critical challenge to her seat on the Board of Supervisors. Her opponent, a former San Diego mayor and staunch supporter of Trump policies, threatens to undo Tara's progress on issues like fossil fuel divestment and expanding shelter beds. If she loses, the Board of Supervisors would tilt towards Trump Republicans instead of Democrats. We would lose our majority. Now, I know La Mesa, your Board of Supervisors representative is not up for re-election this time around, and Tara's is the only competitive race. And it's very important that you put your full effort into making sure Tara is reelected because, unfortunately, a recent poll showed a concerning trend. So about half of voters are still undecided, and among those who are decided, more support Tara's MAC Republican opponent than Tara. So this race is tighter than ever. Tara needs your immediate support. So I'm sure you're thinking, what can you do to help? So Tara really needs volunteers knocking on doors. We have door knocking events on Saturdays, Sundays, and every other Thursday night. And just a few doors knocked on could sway the outcome of this election. So please take action today. I'm going to put a volunteer sign-up link in the chat, as well as a yard sign sign-up link and some information about our student volunteer program. So if you know any young people, please send them the information about the program. I hope to see all of you at our upcoming door knocking events, and I'll put that in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eve. Yes, this is definitely a race. We should do our best to help, keep let Tara keep her seat. I know before I've walked for Tara and they've glommed on several candidates together. Do you know if they're going to be doing kind of like a slate system?
Oh, for sure. So I personally don't know of any planned joint walks so far, but I do know they have been discussed with some other candidates. So what I can do, if you want to text me your number, I can let you know about upcoming events that are joint.
Okay, you can contact the club and then I can let everybody know. We have a very vast email list. Thanks very much for that announcement. Any other announcements? Raise your hand.
I have I have an announcement.
Okay.
My announcement is, what are you doing this next Sunday? Well, please come to my house. It's a meet and greet. It is for Laura Casares. She's running for La Mesa City Council, and Jay Stagger, who is running for Rosemont High School District. Please join us. Both of these candidates are wonderful, and they need all the support that they can get. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat, and just email me, and I'll send you the address. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie. Any other announcements? Okay, thank you all for being here. I think we had a great meeting, and I remember everybody sunscreen tomorrow. And we'll see you next month at William Heisey Park. Remember, we're still not in the center. We're at William Heisey Park. We have once a year, we have a picnic in the park. So it should be a beautiful night, and we look forward to seeing you there. If there's no one, oh, Michelle had an announcement.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to remind people that if you're going to be going to Chicago for the Democratic National Convention, look in your emails, because there is going to be a pre-meeting. And also, what's the other thing that's coming up? The California Democratic Party is now likely to be holding a virtual meeting for the executive board, because it's based on what ballot measures got out of the legislature last Thursday. That was the last day, which was June 27th. So, and one that got out that's very dear to my heart is the Assembly Constitutional Amendment 8, which gets rid of the word slavery, which gets rid of not just the word, but it gets rid of slavery being legal in California in our Constitution. So that will be on our ballot. We don't know any of the numbers yet. And I will continue to give you more information about it, but it will be on the November ballot. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. So yeah, I hope we're all enjoying our summer, because let me tell you, as soon as Labor Day hits, we're going to work our tails off getting, we've got a lot of Democrats to help get elected. So anyway, thank you for being here tonight. I hope you have a wonderful long weekend, and we're adjourned at 8:33. Thank you.